Shalom, my friends. So, after I made my last video, as you can see here, I got some of my common comments, right, from Pepe, this guy here. We'll just call him Pepe. He's a Christian commentator that I don't know if he makes any videos, but he sure likes to make a lot of noise in my comment section. He claims that everybody censors him, so I like to give him a voice. Now, it's interesting because he starts discussing Tovia Singer, right? Rabbi Tovia Singer, of course, the most famous counter-missionary in the world. And he critiques something that in this video, I guess, Tzvi mentions where he says, we're not going to go anywhere. The servant is Israel, right? Referring to Isaiah 53, of course. So he says, the number one anti-missionary from the horse's mouth, Tovia Singer, I thought it was Israel. Weren't Christians corrupt to think it was about a person? Well, yeah, it is corrupt for Christians to think it's about a singular person. And so then he starts quoting, this Pepe individual starts quoting from an article that Tovia Singer wrote on his Outreach Judaism site. And you can see that Pepe only highlighted emboldened and put fingers between every time that Tovia Singer mentions anything about the Messiah, and completely minimizes, or I would argue even ignores, what Tovia is saying regarding the inclusivity of not just the Messiah, but also, at the very least, the righteous remnant, right? Because it says, in order to shed much light on the famed servant songs, numerous rabbinic commentators hold up Jewish heroes plural, as a paradigm of Isaiah 53 servant, right? So already we have evidence that Tovia Singer's position is that it's not just about the Messiah, but more than one person regarding the servant. Accordingly, while on one hand the Talmud Zohar and other ancient rabbinic texts state explicitly that the servant of Isaiah 53 refers to the faithful of corporate Jewry, right? The same sources frequently point to renowned saints of Israel as an archetype for the suffering servant. Saints, plural. Corporate Jewry, plural. Like, all of these are plural, right? These virtuous individuals include saints such as Moses, Elijah, Jeremiah, right? And I've said the same stuff on my channel, right? So completely in line with that. So then, of course, the only part that Pepe highlights is the Messiah, son of Joseph and David, right? Each of them embodies the perfect examples of God's servant and the righteous remnant of Israel, right? So Moses, Elijah, and Jeremiah are also inclusive in that. If you obviously look contextually, this was, the emphasis was given by Pepe because he's only, looking for any little nuggets of messianic application to Isaiah 53 so that he can, erroneously say, well, this means it's Jesus and all this nonsense, right? Typical stuff the Christians do. It even says, rather, the servant and all four servants are the faithful descendants of Abraham, plural. So you see explicitly that, according to what Pepe's quoting, this Christian, that this actually supports what Rabbinic Judaism states, what I have stated, that the Messiah is inclusive of the servant, which is inclusive of the remnant, which ultimately is inclusive of corporate Israel, right? So what does Pepe do? I answer to this and I say, thanks for spreading the truth that the servant is Israel, Messiah included. And yes, Christians are wrong for claiming that Isaiah 53 can only refer to the Messiah, son of David, and no one else. Clearly that's not the case. Pepe responds with his crossing out, in typical fashion. If you see throughout my comment sections, this guy comments incessantly crossing out things. Actually, Tovia in this writing doesn't mention Israel as a whole being the servant, rather an individual, which is the main point. What did we just read, Pepe? He says that the servant songs are the faithful descendants of Abraham. He says that the rabbinic texts explicitly state that the servant refers to a faithful corporate Jewry, renowned saints, plural, virtuous individuals, plural. Like, and that's why I said to him, if you seriously came to that conclusion from reading what you posted, then I can only conclude that you're incapable of understanding dialectical concepts, or you have significantly compromised reading comprehension skills. It gets to a point where, I have a certain level of patience, but when somebody quotes something that directly contradicts what they're saying and they're literally lying about what it says, right? There's nothing you can do about it. You have to call them out on it eventually. Like, we could agree to disagree. No, you're just outright lying. It's right in front of you, right? I guess the Jews that I post this commentary to rabbis have the same issue, as they either don't reply, or when they do, they say that they disagree with him. Like, let's go to the actual article. This is what Tovia spoke about, right? So let's go, where it says, 10 to lift, right? So here's where it says, bear in mind that the rabbinic commentary on Isaiah 53 is not dualistic or multilateral, meaning the sages did not suggest that Isaiah 53 refers to either the righteous remnant of Israel, Moses, Jeremiah, or an anointed leader. Rather, the four servant songs are the faithful, the servant in all four songs are the faithful descendants of Abraham. We just read that. Where did we just read that? We read that right in the quote, right? Bear in mind that the rabbinic commentary of Isaiah 53 is not dualistic or multilateral, meaning that the sages of old did not suggest that Isaiah 53 either. This is the same thing. It says, rather, the servant in all four servant songs are the faithful descendants of Abraham. He quoted from the same article. And he's saying that the whole point of it is that Tovia is writing that it doesn't mention Israel as a whole being the servant, rather an individual, which is the main point. Are the servants of the faithful descendants of Abraham, are they a singular individual, Pepe? Like, if you actually go to the article here, he mentions over and over again that it refers to Israel, right? This is Tovia Singer's article from Outreach Judaism. That the one that he's quoting, look, he's quoting from all the sources that say the servant is Israel, right? Who was God's servant, the rabbinic interpretation of Isaiah 53. That's what this article is. And if you want to see the conclusion of the article, too long didn't read. Simply put, there are 15 verses in the Targum's annotation of Isaiah 53, right? The most ancient rabbinic commentary, effectively, on Isaiah 53. 52, 13 through 15, and Isaiah 53, 1 through 12. Yet with surgical precision, missionary conversionist tracts selectively and deliberately ignore almost all of them, with the exception of the first verse in Isaiah 52:13. This is a well-worn technique of wielding rabbinic literature as an evangelical sledgehammer in order to drive home the well-crafted message to unlettered Jews that the ancient rabbis concealed the truth of Isaiah 53, speaking of Jesus, and not the nation of Israel. Nothing, of course, could be further from the truth. So, this Pepe individual can't even read from a Tovia Singer article without taking it out of context, right? Not only do they take the rabbis of the Talmud out of context and the Targum out of context, they take Tovia Singer out of context. It's like meta, inception. It's like meta inception of taking out of context. Look, I did entire videos about this, right? Where I challenged Dr. Michael Brown, right? Right here, my debate challenge to Dr. Michael Brown. I go through the Targum. I show the parts where it refers to Israel, right? Where it says their complexion was marred, right? Tovia even mentions that in the article regarding the Targum, where it refers to a plurality of people, right? Where it says their sons and their daughters, right? Not his sons and his daughters, as the original text states, right? The Targum says their countenance was darkened among the peoples, and their complexion was darkened among sons of men. How can you look at this and say, oh, the rabbis say it's only about the Messiah and the Targum? You have to literally either be just lying through your teeth or just delusional beyond help. So that's why I said that. I said, if you seriously came to that conclusion for reading what you posted, then I can only conclude that you're incapable of understanding dialectical concepts, or you have significantly compromised reading comprehension skills. And he responds, that, I guess, that the Jews that I post this commentary, including rabbis, have the same issue, as they either don't reply, or when they do, or they say that they disagree with them. So here's the way to really put them in their place, right? To show the hypocrisy of what they're doing. Matthew chapter 2, verses 14 and 15. So watch what I do here. I say, you mean like how your false prophet Matthew claims that out of Egypt I called my son refers to Jesus in Matthew 2, 14 through 15? So I'm quoting from Matthew chapter 2. So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt. This is Joseph, the supposed father of Jesus, taking Jesus to Egypt, where he stayed until the death of Herod. And so was fulfilled what the Lord had said through the prophet, out of Egypt I called my son, right? So this is the famous out of context verse that Matthew applies to Jesus, even though in the immediate context it refers to Israel, right? Matthew literally ripped the last part of this verse out of context and applied it to Jesus when the original context concerns Israel. And I quote from Hosea 11:1, when Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. Matthew literally ripped the second half of Hosea 11:1 out of context and deceptively applied it to Jesus. Are you willing? So I ask him, are you willing to acknowledge that Matthew was disingenuously applying Hosea 11:1 to Jesus when the verse clearly says it refers to Israel? Pepe, why are you changing the conversation? Because why do you think I'm exposing your hypocrisy? Like, if you're going to say that the rabbis contradict themselves and Tovia Singer contradicts himself, like, if he's going, because here's what it is. In Hosea 11:1, the context concerns sinful Israel. The next verse says that they were calling out to the Baalim, if you look at Hosea 11:2, right? So in this case, Matthew is fine with applying a sinful Israel to Jesus, right? So the Christian would have to argue, well, it's a double meaning. Israel has two meanings here, right? It refers to a sinful Israel and a sinless, quote unquote, Israel in who they claim Jesus to be, right? So that's what we're doing with Isaiah 53, right? They're claiming, well, it has to be a sinless servant, but the rabbis are saying, for one thing, the rabbis don't say the Messiah necessarily has to be sinless. I don't know if that's a dogmatic principle the way that it is in Christianity. To my knowledge, it's not. So that's not a problem that we're trying to reconcile. So the rabbis are just simply saying that the servant, inclusive of the Messiah, refers to Israel, right? And he says, why are you changing the conversation? And I said, what a joke you are. You won't answer the question because it exposes your hypocrisy. You know exactly what you're doing. You're just a lying fool. Like, we already demonstrated that he's a lying fool. He quoted directly from Tovia Singer and said it was about a singular individual. So now I'm showing him, look, if you're going to treat the rabbis in this haphazard, piecemeal way, why don't you explain to me what Matthew's doing with out of Egypt I called my son? Because if he says, well, it's both about, sinful Israel and, who he claims to be the Messiah, then he's basically like saying that it can be about both. So then why can't Isaiah 53 be about both the Messiah and, a collective group of people? That's how you checkmate them. They have no way out of that, because then the same technique that they're using against us to say your rabbis contradict each other, you can use that against them when they try to use, when Matthew uses the same dialectical technique, right? They can't have their cake and eat it too. So that's what I said. I said, debating you is like playing chess with a child who barely knows how to play chess. But once you get into checkmate fair and square, like once I get him into checkmate fair and square, you feign ignorance and you try to pretend like we were playing checkers the whole time. Stop being a lying brat and recognize when you've been bested. Like, he's been caught in lie after lie, right? And he won't answer the question because he knows that it exposes his hypocrisy. So then he crosses that out and starts laughing, changing the conversation. Yehuda, you know very well that I debunked all your arguments, especially the many days without a king. He never debunked any of this. Like, you can watch my video, the third temple. Watch my videos on the third temple. Look, you know what? If you guys want me to make a video, I'll make a video referencing all of the third temple references that Jesus failed to fulfill, right? Including Zechariah chapter 8, verse 19, that Jesus didn't fulfill. That's clearly about the future messianic era when the temple will be built, and we won't be fasting on those days and mourning the destruction, right, of the temple, that Christians don't comply as proof. Tisha B'Av, he doesn't even know what it is. Tisha B'Av, yeah. Let's not forget that the servant is not just an individual, but God himself. We already demonstrated from the Targum, buddy, that it's referring to a collective group of people, right? Like, it's nonsense. This guy is just, he has nothing. Lying brat, you're breaking my heart. Show me proof that I lie so that I could repent. Okay, that's funny. Your ridiculous comments just gave me a platform to expose your hypocrisy, right? Exactly, that's why I'm making this video. If Matthew can apply Israel to refer to your false Messiah in Hosea 11:1, then you can shut up about rabbis apparently contradicting themselves when your own New Testament writers are guilty of the same. Keep running from answering the question because you've already lost. So then I confront him again and I say, here's your lie. Hosea 11:1 speaking about Jesus or sinful Israel? You refuse to answer the question because you know the answer will expose your hypocrisy in the way that you treat rabbinic texts. Prove me wrong and answer my question. Is Hosea 11:1 speaking about Jesus or sinful Israel? Of course, he has to answer both, which means that his insistence that the rabbis are contradicting themselves when they say it's both. Tovia says it's both. The rabbis say it's both. It's not just the Messiah. It's not just Israel apart from the Messiah. It's both. It's checkmate for him. He can't use this rabbinic shield to try and avoid the facts that the servant is Israel, and there's no way around it. If you refuse to answer, then I will have exposed your lie. Prove me wrong. Of course, I know he's not going to answer, and he didn't. And then he crosses it out and says, how can it be a lie if I haven't even brought Jesus into the conversation? Because you already lied about the fact that you claim that the rabbis, including Tovia Singer, were claiming that it was only about the Messiah, according to what Tovia wrote. That is your lie. But I'm just trying to get you to answer a question to further dig yourself in a hole, and you're too much of a coward to recognize it. So, sometimes your cowardice says more than your answer, because that is your answer. I said I knew it. You refuse to answer the question, which proves your hypocrisy. Thank you for proving your hypocrisy for all to see. When you finally get the courage to answer whether or not Hosea 11:1 is about Jesus or sinful Israel, then I will be able to respect you on some level. Until then, you've been exposed as a hypocritical Christian coward for all to see. And then he says, first you accuse me of having reading comprehension issues, then lying, and finally not wanting to answer your question. As you know, I stick to one issue at a time in this instance, which is the fact that Tovia writes the servant is an individual and not Israel as a whole. We just proved him wrong. The article that he quoted from literally says that it's about Israel. So you're just lying again. You even gave me a heart, which I found weird since Jews and rabbis either ignore or disagree with Tovia on this issue. Yeah, probably because you showed him, just like you didn't show the entire article. You quoted it out of context. Like I said, Christians just quote like meta out of context in this inception way. Like, they can't read anything honestly, this Pepe guy. Like, I'm not saying all Christians, but I mean, virtually all of them are not, anyone who's quoting on my YouTube channel trying to make sense of things. I'd say 99% are delusional. You falsely accuse me of lying, which is not no, you've just been exposed as lying. It's right in front of you. Now, if you want to change the subject, we could, and I'll checkmate you as I usually do. Then, of course, you'll proceed to call me names and change the conversation as usual. This is it, man. You want to respond to this video? Go for it. But you've been checkmated every way possible. You don't have anything to stand on. Answer my question. This is your last chance. If you make any comments on this video, Pepe, and it's not answering my question about Hosea 11:1 referring to Jesus or sinful Israel, if you answer any questions other than that, right? If you go on a different topic, right? So this is actually your opportunity, right? If you want to change the subject, right? So when I make this video, the first comment, since I know you're going to comment on the video, I want you to comment and answer my question. Is Hosea 11:1, when it says, out of Egypt I called my son, is that referring to Jesus, or is that referring to Israel? Sinful Israel, right? Answer me. And anybody, any Christian who wants to answer that question, please. But I promise you, Pepe will not answer. And if he does, he's going to be very disingenuous about it. I want you to prove me wrong, Pepe. Answer the question. Is Israel, when it says, out of Egypt I called my son, right? In that verse, in Hosea 11:1, does that, when it says out of Egypt I called my son, regarding when it says, when Israel was a child I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son, right? Let's look at the verse so that there's no question about what we're talking about. Where did I make? Yeah, so right. So here it is. When Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. Is this speaking about corporate sinful Israel, or is it speaking about only who you believe the Messiah is, Jesus? Answer me that in this video. The ball is in your court. Let's see if you're able to comply with this simple request. Shalom Aleichem.